Thanks. It's a great honor, and I'm very grateful to be representing the World Council for Health at your very important conference today. I have a slide deck, so I'm going to share my screen. I'll be speaking about a better way and the World Council for Health vision for health and sovereignty. So the state of health and sovereignty in 2023, from our perspective, is that we are dealing with a man-made health crisis from the COVID crisis. We have likelihood that that gain-of-function research is implicated in the origins of COVID. We've seen in the last 3 years effective treatments for COVID withheld. We've seen dangerous experimental injections called vaccines deployed widely. Our elected representatives are not listening at all to our concerns. And we've seen a globalist agenda pushing for centralized control of global health through the World Health Organization. And this cartoon captures it quite well. The past 3 years, we've seen this centralized health strategy, which has really caused tremendous damage, both socially and economically, and certainly harmful to global health around the world. So who are the World Council for Health? We're an international grassroots collaboration of more than 200 groups now that aims to unite people in all countries around 7 universal principles to co-create a better way for humanity. Our mission is fundamentally to empower health, freedom, and sovereignty, to get people taking responsibility for their health and their lives. Now, this is the Better Way Charter. It came about after last year's Better Way conference in Bath, and it basically outlines 7 principles that we can all get behind, and that resonates generally around the world about how we can co-create a better world together. And this involves, number 1, acting in honor and doing no harm, not just doctors, but everybody. And we do our best to live by this. We are free beings with free will, so we all take responsibility for and control of our lives, our choices, and our health. We are part of nature, so we recognize we need a healthy planet as well, and we should nurture the planet as well as the people. Spirituality is integral to our well-being, and when our lives have purpose and meaning, we thrive. Number 5, we thrive together. So we're inclusive and we value our diverse communities. We value different perspectives because this is how we get along and refine our wisdom and knowledge. And number 7, we use technology with discernment. So we recognize technology as useful, but it needs to be used to benefit people and the planet and not to enslave them. As an important footnote, we do not tolerate the violation of inalienable rights and freedoms, and we don't tolerate profit, power, and influence coming up before the well-being of people and the planet. So our core activities are aimed at promoting holistic health and preventive health, getting people to take responsibility for what they eat, do, and think, so that we're healthy from the get-go, and we don't get all these terrible chronic illnesses. Sorry, it doesn't seem to want to move on to the next slide. There we go. We promote freedom, and we seem to have forgotten what it means to be free, so I've made a few notes here. It's having a mind without fear. It's doing what we're designed to do by our Creator, not what others want us to do or tell us to do. It's being self-reliant, thinking, speaking, and traveling without control by others. It's knowing that everybody is equal and no one is above the law. No one has authority over us. And it's seeking truth and knowing right from wrong. Now, sovereignty is also a concept that we've forgotten and become very disconnected from. Being a sovereign being, it means that we are standalone and unique, each and every one of us. We manage ourselves and we solve our own problems. We are our own land, our own territory. We act on our conscience and we know right from wrong. We know that what's not a wrong is our right. we govern ourselves, and we operate within the laws of nature, and we live in harmony with nature. Being sovereign is how we create, thrive, and evolve. So how we manifest this through our work is we promote healthy activities, water, nutrition, unplugging from technology, breathwork, nature, and so on. We stand up for inalienable rights. Now, the World Council for Health, as far back as November 2021, highlighted the unprecedented rates of adverse events from the COVID-19 genetic injections, and we campaigned to have the vaccine programs stopped. We also connect with people and communities. So we provide resources to empower people to not be afraid, and remind them of the importance of and what it means to be human. And we also have conducted a very important campaign since March 2022, which is to stop the WHO treaty or accord, and I'll spend a bit of time telling you more about that. So some of our activities in 2021 were to come out with a COVID treatment guide, at-home COVID treatment guide, and this was really when there was no people were being told to just stay home wait until they turned blue, and then the ambulance would come and take them away. So it was really very much appreciated and downloaded millions of times. We have weekly General Assembly meetings. We've now had, I think we're on the 87th or so, where we invite expert speakers to speak about all manner of things from health, medicine to holistic health prevention activities, to sovereignty, to farming, to really a very broad range of speakers. We published in November 2021 a spike protein detox guide to help people clear the huge quantities or reduce the quantities of spike protein in their body that's produced by the COVID vaccines or from having COVID itself. December was when we launched the cease and desist campaign. We held a very important conference last year in May. It was probably the first international conference after all the lockdowns where people could come together in person and meet and discuss everything that had been going on and going wrong, from media to the subjugation of human rights and the law, and also to discuss new ways of taking care of ourselves and our communities. So I'll be telling you more about our new conference too. So in June last year, we published a pharmacovigilance report, which clearly demonstrated the unprecedented numbers of adverse reactions to the COVID-19 injections that is being noted on all the databases around the world. We published the 7 Principles of a Better Way, the Better Way Charter, in July, and we launched Source, which is a community platform for empowerment. So, roll on 2023. And we had we did a survey at the beginning of this year and asked people, what do they want from us as the World Council for Health? As I say, we're a grassroots initiative. And so we were asked if we could keep providing resources on the COVID injections and on how to treat COVID and all the emerging diseases that we are seeing now. But we also said, can you be an alternative to the World Health Organization? Now, we don't think at all that we need another centralized World Health Organization. It's been quite clear that the centralized policymaking is in fact the biggest threat to health. And it's very much aligned with the World Economic Forum think tank, it calls itself, which is that in 2030 we will own nothing, have no privacy, and be happy. So there's this push for monopolization of health, and sadly corruption goes hand in hand with this kind of centralized approach. So just there's a lot of information on this slide, but I just want to point out that our governments, it's the third row down, they are the policy enforcers. So it's our health services that are the policy enforcers. They do not make the policies. The policies come from these international think tanks, the World Economic Forum, Chatham House, Council on Foreign Relations, the Rockefeller Foundation, Club of Rome. It's these groups that are actually making policies, part of the global public-private partnerships. It's a corporate structure that is dictating health policy. And the WHO is simply a policy distributor. The national governments are the policy enforcers, and they have selected scientific authorities that are fraught with conflicts of interest. Many of the individuals, certainly on the UK scientific boards, have conflicts of interest with pharmaceutical companies and so on. So then we're right at the bottom. We're subject to a lot of behavioral propaganda, and everything cascades down to us. We pay for the system, and we receive whatever it is the corporations have decided we need to keep their profits going. How they intend to create this even a more centralized approach is through a two-track process whereby the World Health Organization and its Director General receive the authority to dictate what goes on in another pandemic or a public health emergency of international concern, be it actual or potential. And I'll just explain a little bit more about this. There's a new treaty which you probably have heard of called the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty. Now this treaty was the procedure was first adopted in 2021, December, and it's been in process of being drafted since then. That on the one hand is it's a new treaty, so our governments do need to sign up to it, and it's legally binding. But on the other hand, we have another legally binding procedure that's ongoing, and this is amendments to the 2005 International Health Regulations. So that is it is a legally binding document, but it's in the process of being amended, and it really, if you have a look at it, basically, the majority of the document's been crossed out and rewritten. That does not need signing by anybody. It's just a vote at the World Health Assembly, either this May or next. So this would make the World Health Organization, they both do the same thing. They're complementary instruments, and they both lead to the constitution of the World Health Organization superseding those of national authorities in the event of a health emergency, real or imagined. This slide is really just to show how these international health regulations are central to the authorization of a number of activities that facilitate the Agenda 2030, notably, for example, this Global Preparedness and Monitoring Board. This is the body that's supposedly surveilling for new bugs and pathogens, and would say, we've detected a Marburg virus in Guinea, and feed that information to the World Health Organization Director General, who could then declare another pandemic on the basis of very little evidence. And then you can see, there's a whole industry here. These partnerships with these drug companies, they would get the deal to make the injections, and there we go. So this international health regulations, the permissions and the authority that the World Health Organization and its influences, a handful of influential nations, organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and corporations would get enormous powers, as would our governments, in fact. So, the World Council for Health has recently published a document, a policy brief called Rejecting Monopoly Power Over Public Health. One needs to realize that these documents, it's not just about the World Health Organization, although this document particularly addresses the proposed amendments to the international health regulations and the WHO pandemic treaty. There are other legal frameworks being put in place to facilitate this centralization of power. So this document is very much about monopoly power. It's not just about the World Health Organization, and it's been developed by a group that we're working with that are experts in political science and law. It provides an in-depth analysis highlighting that these two instruments are complementary, and that if the international health regulation amendments are adopted, would hand extraordinary monopoly power over aspects of global public health to the World Health Organization in the event of a public health emergency. It creates in many ways a self-perpetuating pandemic industry, because the World Health Organization would get to identify the pathogen, call the emergency, allocate the contracts, say what countries have to do in terms of lockdowns, etc., in terms of the number of injections, in terms of the safety of the injections, and even in terms of how much the country needs to support other countries in their rollouts of their compliance with the diktats, and we would have very little to say about it, because the diktats are obligatory. So some of these amendments, all of them could be voted in as early as May 2023. And I'll just go through briefly the differences between these two documents. The International Health Regulations amendments, they change what was previously non-binding advice. So the World Health Organization would advise and make some recommendations, but countries weren't legally bound to follow them. Well, that changes with these new amendments. And the recommendations of the World Health Organization and its Director General become mandatory and legally binding. And it increases the power of the Director General, that he literally can declare a pandemic and state what needs to be done. So it puts an extraordinary amount of power in the hands of one person, and an unelected, unaccountable person at that. And somebody with industry ties and so on. So it's really undesirable for many reasons. The International Health Regulation amendments also increase, they allow for mass surveillance of compliance via so-called health certificates, and the preferences for digital certificates that with contact tracing and tracing of us, making sure that we are trackable wherever we go. There's a very concerning clauses about misinformation and disinformation, and there's a systematic countering of dissent. If you don't agree with the official lines, then you would be censored. There's also extraordinary cartel rights and unsolicited offers and obligations to cooperate. So countries and individuals, we as people would have an obligation, our countries would have an obligation to cooperate, and they would get offers to help, so-called that would be very difficult to refuse. You have to give a reason why you're refusing, why you don't want the help that's offered, so there there again, it supersedes the country's right to choose, not least of all the individual right to choose what health products and things and how one wishes to keep healthy. So, and then there's a sharing of pathogens and genetic sequence data. So, which in itself is a dangerous thing to have these pathogens being shared around countries and laboratories. So the pandemic treaty has a lot of similarities. Again, it recognizes the WHO as the central authority on global public health and science. So, they are the science, or wish to be the science. There's a support for gain-of-function research, which many people feel is the reason we're in the mess that we've been in the last 3 years in the first place. Again, this censorship and countering of dissent and other views and opinions and expertise. The control of the global supply chain and logistics networks. So, this is huge conflicts of interest if you control a network of drugs and the distribution, but you also declare the disease and the management. And it's just generally a one-sided public health approach. They call it the One Health approach, and it completely goes against individual health and sovereignty and the freedom to choose how one wishes to be healthy and prevent disease. So in general, what these documents do is they raise serious questions to the future of governance, because this is a centralized global governance versus country democratic governance. It raises serious questions about the future of free speech and the right to disagree, the future of the right to privacy, the extent of digital surveillance and private data mining, the control over the production of and access to medical treatments, and the integrity of the regulatory processes, and also the future of gain-of-function research, which is promoted by the WHO. So what we do see as a central theme is the production of what is being called vaccines, using these new platforms, this mRNA platform, which is novel and has not been well tested, and there's a huge concern about the harms of this platform. So the World Health Organization, you have to remember, only controls about a quarter of its budget. 3/4 of its budget is voluntary contributions that can be directed. So it's quite clear that this huge amount of money the WHO is getting is being directed towards vaccines, vaccine promotion and development. And this week it's Vaccine Week, it's Immunization Week at the World Health Organization. And, they're proposing that vaccines protect us from diseases at every stage of our life. So it's vaccines from birth till death. And you'll see on this poster on the right that they have, by 2030, the immunization agenda aims to introduce 500 new vaccines in low and middle income countries. When I first heard that, I thought that must be a joke, but in actual fact, there it is on their poster. So they see vaccines as a really a one-size-fits-all approach. In their One Health approach, it seems to be that vaccines are pretty much the only thing that they offer in terms of so-called healthcare. So I think it's quite clear that this organization has been corrupted and co-opted, and we need to think very carefully about what to do about it. So these are some more posters from their campaign this week. They say the impact of childhood vaccination is increasing. In actual fact, what we are seeing is such a huge number such a huge proportion of young people with chronic illness and autism spectrum diseases and so on, that we really need to have a proper scientific debate, open debate and discussion about the impact of childhood vaccination, because it would appear that it is increasing, but not in a good way. The way where we recommend focusing, certainly how we are focusing on this rejection of monopoly power, is to encouraging a rejection of the treaty and of these amendments. What many people don't know is there were some amendments passed last year already in May 2022, 5 amendments which actually reduced the time that people could, or that countries could reject future amendments and reduce the time to implementation. So, and these amendments they've been passed, but they could be rejected before if one wants to reject them, they need to be rejected before November 2023. But nobody's even speaking about these amendments, and there seems to be a real sort of blackout on the awareness of these, certainly in the media and in our parliaments and so on. So we need to raise awareness that there actually were some amendments passed last year. Sorry, let me just go back, and that they can still be rejected. And what they do is they reduce the time of implementation. So if the WHO, if there's amendments adopted in May, for example, it would mean that countries, if they didn't reject the amendments, they would need to implement them by within 12 months as opposed to 24 months. So that's just an example. And you can see how easily it's done. It didn't require a government, countries, or any public participation. They just went ahead and did it. So we also recommend a decentralization of the control of health and empowering of individual responsibility for health and sovereignty. So we really need to get people aware and active and looking after themselves, taking responsibility for their health and choices, and saying no to this bullying into vaccines and so on that aren't proven safe. So also protecting the rights to privacy. We want to raise awareness of this of the digital ID and digital health certificates, and also the sharing of private health data. So there's a clause in the amended documents, in the amended IHR, which gives the WHO the right to access personal health data and share it with relevant personnel, whatever that means. So another great concern, we want to raise awareness and protect free speech and the right to question and dissent. We need to address the integrity of regulatory processes, so we need to be really lobbying our politicians and health authorities and saying, what happened with the approval processes of the COVID vaccines? Why were they allowed without proper checks? And ultimately, we need to defund and halt gain-of-function research. That may very well mean defunding and exiting the WHO. And we need to run anti-monopoly awareness campaigns to counter this global propaganda, which really aims at seducing people with convenience and not highlighting the risks of these encroaching technologies. So part of our approach, we have at World Council for Health, we have a country level approach as well as an individual and community level approach. Our country approach is to facilitate the establishment of country councils for health, and we're in the process of establishing a number of country councils. So far we have the Philippine Council for Health, which was established in 2023, and World Council for Health South Africa, which was established just a couple of weeks ago, were activated. And these councils are responsible for promoting the Better Way Charter for health, freedom and sovereignty, encouraging responsibility for health amongst the men, women and children in the countries, developing country-specific policies and health guidance that's suited to local needs, creating the Country Council website, which has country-specific resources. They will be educating and advocating for the protection of inalienable rights and empowering people about their rights, providing accreditation to health centers, practitioners and laboratories, and also by ethical approval for country research, supporting educational initiatives related to innovative, holistic, and traditional health practices, and establishing World Council for Health Centers of Excellence for Integrative Health. And, one of the key features of these councils for health is really to decentralize further. So it's not to establish a new centralized system, and it's also, it's not to be imposing anything on anyone. The way that we envisage and encourage groups to establish their councils is really using a decentralized grassroots approach, drawing in the expertise from the grassroots, asking real public participation, what do people want, and decentralizing the responsibility for health to communities and ultimately to the individuals, so that each individual is wearing the T-shirt, I am my country, I am my council for health, and I do my own research and I look after myself. So this is what we would like to see, the decentralization of health, really putting health really back in the hands of the individual. So a summary of our strategy: we have an individual level approach, which is to provide resources to people to step away from fear and take control of their health and sovereignty. We have a community level approach where we educate and share resources to empower communities, and a country level approach, which is to facilitate these country councils that are totally autonomous, do their own thing. And the World Council for Health ultimately will have representation from these country groups around the world, and we see it at the moment as really a provisional steering committee until all of these country councils are in place, and we will be sharing, meeting and sharing information and what works best in our different countries and regions. So in summary, decentralization is key to countering monopoly power. And you will probably be aware of the term and dystopian vision, the Great Reset, which is the dystopian vision of the World Economic Forum. Well, the way we counter that is really to take back control of our lives and our health and set ourselves free in the process. So freedom and sovereignty is absolutely integral to optimal health. And we've just launched a campaign called the Great Reset in collaboration. It's a joint project with Children's Health Defense and any other groups that would like to join. It's really something that we wish to inspire people to think about how we can create a better world, set ourselves free from all the corruption and surveillance and attempts to control us, and actually feel excited about this process rather than afraid. Before I sign off, I just want to say that we're holding a Better Way conference, the second one this year in June. This year it's called Unveiling a Better Way for Health, Freedom and Sovereignty. We've got some wonderful speakers coming from around the world, and we'll be speaking about things from big pharma and fake food to climate change, transhumanism and AI, governance, abundance, scarcity and abundance, and human rights. And of course, very importantly, we will be discussing the World Health Organization and the increasing monopolization of global health. So a very solutions-focused conference, and it would be wonderful if you could come to Bath. If you can't come to Bath, it is possible to attend online, but there's so much to be gained by our meeting in person. So I do encourage you to come. I have a video to share. I'm not sure if it's going to play very well. Let me just check if there's a way. I'll give it a try. I hope it does play. Perhaps I can just pause for a moment. I'll just stop for a moment and just see if it will. There we go. I think this will work. Okay. There we go. So thank you very much. And just to say there is a better way, and we look forward to working together with